Can you believe it? A gigantic terminal designed to welcome 10 million passengers per year is completely devoid of people. A super runway stretching 4,100 meters, capable of accommodating the Airbus A380 superplane, now has to be painted with huge yellow crosses to warn pilots against landing. That is not the setting of a post-apocalyptic movie, but the stark reality at Ciudad Real Central Airport in Spain. In Europe, there are concrete monsters that consumed hundreds of millions to over 7 billion euros in budget, but ended up as empty ghost airports. The disastrous combination of macro planning mistakes, local political ambitions, and financial crises has turned a series of mega aviation projects into the most expensive, wasteful scars in history. Today, let's uncover the truth behind the European air traffic infrastructure crisis and identify the top 10 disastrous ghost airports that no airline wants to set foot in. Look straight at this number, 1.1 billion euros. That is not the budget of a small country. It is the amount of money that investors and credit funds threw into an empty plot of land in the Castilla-La Mancha region to build the Ciudad Real Central Airport. The ambition at that time was immense. The first private international airport in Spain, with a super terminal ready to accommodate 10 million passengers a year and a 4,100-meter runway capable of handling sky monsters like the Airbus A380. They wanted to share the load with Madrid Barajas. But in the end, they equally shared a disaster. Where does the fatal mistake lie? Basic geography. This construction is located 240 kilometers from the capital, Madrid. If it were you, would you be willing to land in a desolate place only to sadly realize that the so-called connectivity infrastructure, an AVE high-speed train station promising to take you to the capital in 50 minutes, never actually existed in the construction plans? That was a spectacular scam with empty promises. Opened in 2008, closed and declared bankrupt in 2012. 4 years of short-lived commercial operation were a long string of humiliating days. By 2010, the passenger flow had plummeted to just a few thousand people. The only low-cost airline, Ryanair, saw this prospect and immediately fled. When an airport no longer sees a single plane wanting to take off, it truly becomes a concrete graveyard. The million-dollar baggage conveyor system is now only used to collect dust. More painfully, they had to paint huge yellow crosses along the runway, a cold international symbol to warn pilots. Landing prohibited. What about the financial repercussions? The debt collapse exceeding 300 million euros directly suffocated the local savings bank Caja Castilla-La Mancha, forcing the Bank of Spain and the European Central Bank to inject rescue funds. The public financial system stepped in to bear the debt for the macroeconomic mistakes of the private sector. By 2015, the peak of irony appeared when this billion-dollar mega-project was put up for public auction with a starting price shockingly low, 10,000 euros, the price of an old motorcycle. After countless legal disputes, it was transferred for around 56 million euros, which means it lost 95% of its original value. Now, what is this place? A storage and dismantling yard for old aircraft. The taxpayer looks at it and realizes they are standing before a bitter monument of the reckless investment era before 2008. How could a massive project, approved by a series of financial expert councils and top planners, be misaligned geographically with the target market by more than 200 kilometers? Is it the greed from easy capital flows and the delusions of power from interest groups that have blinded the oversight system, causing the most basic economic principles to be thrown out the window? If Ciudad Real is the bitter end of the madness of private capital, then right after that, we will step into an even more classic aviation disaster. Look at the figure of 150 million euros in public budget for the province of Castellón, Spain. All that tax money was poured into a home turf project of Carlos Fabra, a powerful local political leader, despite all the red flags from economists. Its location is a planning joke. They built it less than 60 kilometers from Valencia International Airport, a distance too short to create any healthy competition for passenger traffic. But the real farce began in March 2011. A grand inauguration ceremony was held, with colorful flags and flowers and eloquent speeches. Purpose? Right before the local elections. But there is a hidden truth. At the time of its inauguration, the airport completely lacked a commercial aviation operating license, and no airline was interested in registering. The consequence was a shameful record. For 4 consecutive years thereafter, the terminal was locked up, the waiting hall was empty, receiving no passengers. Strangely, despite having no flights, the budget still had to begrudgingly spend over 30 million euros on pointless advertising campaigns and maintaining the empty infrastructure. The pinnacle of incompetence lies in the runway technical error. When the construction was completed, people were shocked to discover that the turning head was designed too narrow. Large commercial airplanes landing here will not be able to turn around safely. How to correct it? Dig up the entire surface, restructure the foundation, and expand the runway. Millions more in tax money are going up in smoke. Not stopping there, a gigantic bronze statue 25 meters tall, worth 300,000 euros, was erected right at the entrance. The face of the statue is modeled after the very portrait of that ambitious politician. A bitter irony until 2013, when he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for financial misconduct and tax evasion. The statue naturally became a monument to the failure of the oversight system. Currently, after many efforts of public funding, this airport only barely receives about 100,000 to 150,000 passengers each year, mainly thanks to a few short, low-cost flights in the summer. Revenue has completely evaporated, losses have accumulated endlessly, and the annual operational burden continues to weigh heavily on the shoulders of the local residents. It has gone straight into global textbooks, as a classic example of public policy being manipulated by personal ego. Spain may have wasted hundreds of millions of euros on empty airports, but that scale is still too small compared to a decade-long project management disaster that cost nearly 50 times that amount, right in the heart of Europe's most developed economy, Germany. People often praise Germany as the ultimate symbol of precision, technological discipline, and management efficiency. But this investigative report will reveal a completely opposite truth. Look at this calculation. The initial investment estimate was only 1 billion euros. But when the first planes rolled out, the actual figure soared to over 7 billion euros. Berlin-Brandenburg is not just an airport. It is a complex systemic disaster that has dragged on for an entire decade. The delay here is a shameful record. 9 years. Originally scheduled to open in October 2011, after enduring 9 bitter delays, the new construction might finally open in 2020. Let's turn back time to the night before the disaster in 2012. Just 26 days before the day, when 10,000 test suitcases were already lined up on the conveyor belt, an emergency cancellation order was issued. The reason? The fire protection system, which engineers fearfully refer to as the monster, has a fatal design flaw. Instead of sucking smoke up to the ceiling, this system sucks smoke straight down into the ground. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Subsequent technical inspections uncovered a massive volume of errors, over 550,000 major and minor faults, from the overloaded electrical cable system at risk of short-circuiting to the emergency exit doors that automatically lock tight when an alarm goes off. And here is the craziest paradox of this million-dollar graveyard. From 2012 to 2020, the entire gigantic station was always brightly lit and running information screens 24/7. Why? Because the central computer system malfunctioned so severely that the engineers couldn't even turn off the lights. The invisible waste doesn't stop there. Every month lying idle, the project consumes 10 to 20 million euros in tax money just to run air conditioning, clean, and pay the maintenance staff for a facility with no visitors. Even the empty ghost trains still have to run through the underground tunnels daily just to prevent the tracks from rusting. The economic consequences left behind are extremely brutal. This horrific delay drained the cash flow and pushed Air Berlin, the second largest airline in Germany, into bankruptcy in 2017. The entire original board of directors was purged. A series of chief architects were disgraced. Bitterly, when the airport officially opened in 2020, the world fell into the peak of the pandemic, and flight traffic dropped by 90%. The brand new Terminal 2 continued to be unused until 2022. Even the old Terminal 5 was permanently shut down due to excess capacity. Currently, this facility continues to report losses of 80 to 150 million euros each year, stifling the technological pride of the Germans. How is it that a country leading the world in precision engineering has been powerless against a ventilation system for nearly 10 years? Is it because politicians are sitting in the 7 billion euro armchair? Nicosia International Airport was once a futuristic pride, the only bustling air traffic hub on the entire island of Cyprus. In 1968, a brand new terminal with a 60s space-age architectural style was inaugurated at a high cost, but that golden era was too short-lived. On the 20th of July 1974, a geopolitical shock struck. The Turkish army attacked Cyprus after a coup by Greek Cypriots. Nicosia immediately turned into a fierce battlefield. The whirring of commercial jet engines was replaced by the roar of bombs. In mid-August 1974, the last commercial flight hurriedly took off for evacuation. From that moment, time officially stood still here. For over 50 years, legal destiny has turned this place into the most original and solitary ghost airport on the planet. It is locked within the United Nations demilitarized zone, separating two hostile sides. Surrounding it are dense barbed wire fences and watchtowers, equipped with rifles manned by peacekeeping soldiers. No one is allowed to touch. Stepping inside the station, you will feel a shiver as if watching a post-apocalyptic movie. The brightly upholstered waiting chairs from the 70s are now decayed, covered in thick layers of petrified dust and bird droppings. Especially, beyond the desolate runway, the most painful relic is the wreck of the Hawker Siddeley Trident aircraft of Cyprus Airways. The freezing of the infrastructure located in the most advantageous position on this island is a colossal economic loss. For the past 50 years, it has not contributed a single cent to the economy. On the contrary, it forced both the southern and northern administrations to grit their teeth and spend hundreds of millions of USD to build new airports from scratch in order to maintain connectivity. Nicosia is a chilling reminder that political hatred can freeze and destroy all human achievements overnight. 620 hectares of prime Mediterranean coastal land, 3 times the size of the Principality of Monaco, once housed the bustling Ellinikon International Airport for 60 years. In March 2001, it was decommissioned to make way for a new airport, serving the grand gamble known as the Athens 2004 Olympics. Tens of millions of euros from the public budget were poured in to hastily transform the runway and old hangar into sports arenas. But just as the Olympic torch was extinguished, the debt trap fell. The Greek government ran out of money, leaving the entire million-dollar infrastructure in ruins. The public debt crisis of 2009 continued to freeze all projects, turning the most valuable land in Europe into a massive slum of infrastructure. Weeds grew through the concrete, the station was vandalized, and it was filled with trash. The bitter climax came in 2015, when this empty waiting hall became a shabby temporary shelter for over 3,000 refugees. A potentially lucrative asset lies idle, consuming millions of euros in maintenance costs each year. Under financial pressure from the EU and IMF, Greece was forced to sell the development rights of the land to private investors. A super redevelopment project worth over 8 billion euros is being planned to demolish the old airport, transforming it into the eco-metropolis, the Ellinikon. Although it is expected to contribute 2.4% to the national GDP, in reality, this place remains an unfinished construction site with half-demolished hangars, along with a tense legal battle between architects who want to preserve the heritage and tycoons who want to flatten everything. Ellinikon chose to demolish the past to build the future. But right after that, in Germany, the people of Berlin made a completely opposite decision regarding a ghost airport that carries the heavy shadow of their dictatorship. Berlin Tempelhof was once honored by the aviation world as the mother of all airports. In the 1930s, under the hands of architect Albert Speer and the grand ambitions of Adolf Hitler, it was constructed into a 1.2 kilometers long arched limestone terminal building, one of the largest structures on the planet by floor area, the supreme gateway of the world capital Germania. This place was also a Cold War hero during the Berlin airlift operation, when Allied planes landed every 90 seconds to supply and save 2 million people blockaded by the Soviet Union. But the laws of urbanization spare no one. Located in the heart of a residential area, causing noise pollution and having runways too short for modern jets, Tempelhof officially ceased operations in October 2008. The massive infrastructure with over 9,000 rooms suddenly became empty. Real estate tycoons immediately jumped in, demanding to subdivide this golden land area of over 300 hectares to build luxury apartments. But they lost to the people of Berlin. In 2014, a historic referendum took place. More than 64% of the population voted against all commercial projects, forcing the authorities to maintain the status quo as a free park. Tempelhof fell. No more airplanes. The two old runways are now bustling with thousands of people coming to ride bikes, fly kites, and grow vegetables. Inside the terminal, the empty hangars have become the largest emergency accommodation center in Germany for the wave of refugees from Syria and Ukraine. Although it does not generate any aviation revenue, Berlin still has to spend tens of millions of euros in taxes each year just to preserve the structure of this heritage building from deteriorating. There are airports that are abandoned not because of miscalculations, but because they represent the sovereignty of a nation which has been crushed by geopolitical conflicts. Yasser Arafat International Airport, a project worth $86 million USD, was assembled from international donations from Japan, Germany, Spain, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. The terminal was beautifully designed by Moroccan architects with traditional mosaic walls and luxurious gold-plated domes. In November 1998, a glorious moment occurred when US President Bill Clinton and Chairman Yasser Arafat cut the inauguration ribbon, igniting hopes for peace in the Middle East. The airport was ready to handle 700,000 passengers each year along with Palestinian Airlines, but the geopolitical trap fell too quickly. In October 2000, the Second Intifada uprising erupted and the airspace was closed. In December 2001, bombs destroyed the radar control tower. By January 2002, heavy bulldozers moved in, shredding the more than 3,000-meter runway into irreparable deep trenches. Subsequent conflicts bombed the main terminal to the ground. This place has turned into a modern archaeological ruin, submerged in waste. Due to the blockade causing a shortage of materials, local residents have to risk venturing into the crumbling concrete dam to salvage steel and rubble for building houses. 100% of international funding turned into rubble just 3 years into operation. Gaza has been completely cut off from air traffic control, falling into deep humanitarian isolation. Through the lens of a satellite, only the skeletal frame of the gilded dome stands alone amidst the wasteland and bomb craters. In this segment, the destroyer is not bombs or politics, but the relentless flow of technology. Croydon is the birthplace of aviation standards. The world's first air traffic control tower was built here, and the international distress signal Mayday was also invented here in 1923. The Airport House Terminal, with its elegant Art Deco style, once hosted legends like Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart. During World War II, it became a strategic base for the Royal Air Force, RAF, to help defend the skies of England. But Croydon had a fatal technical limitation. The runway was too short, only about 1,200 meters long. The 1950s, the jet age exploded. The new generation of sky monsters required runways longer than 2,500 meters with extremely thick concrete. Caught in a dilemma, Croydon was suffocated by surrounding London residential areas, unable to expand its area. On the 30th of September 1959, the last commercial flight left the runway, and the airport officially closed permanently after 40 years of service. The entire air traffic immediately migrated to the larger Heathrow and Gatwick. Shortly thereafter, most of the runway was flattened to build social housing, schools, and industrial areas. They only preserved the core, which is the main terminal building and the control tower, as Grade 2 times heritage. The once bustling check-in hall is now quiet, transformed into small rental offices and a mini museum. Today's visitors can only see a model propeller plane quietly placed on the lawn in front of the empty old building. It proves a harsh truth. If you cannot evolve with technology, you will be eliminated, no matter how great your history is. Look at this huge, dreary concrete block. Architects call this a great masterpiece of the Soviet brutalist architectural style. Terminal 1 of Zvartnots Airport, inaugurated in 1980, was designed as a model gateway with a futuristic concentric circular structure, resembling a UFO that has just landed in the Ararat Valley. At the center of the circle stands the control tower, 61 meters tall, rising proudly. In its heyday, this place once welcomed over 2.5 million visitors each year. But when the curtain of history fell, the harsh reality of modern aviation immediately exposed its functional obsolescence. According to new international standards, this futuristic circular structure turned out to be a space prison, too cramped, unable to accommodate modern security and customs screening systems. In 2011, all operations were halted, and passengers were transferred to the brand new Terminal 2 next door. Terminal 1 was permanently locked up. For over a decade, this million-dollar masterpiece has turned into a haunting ruin. The windows are shattered, and the interior is filled with trash and bird droppings. The central tower shows large cracks, exposing its rusty steel core. Bitterer still, a gripping legal battle is underway. Investors are continuously filing petitions to demolish this concrete block for structural safety reasons, while international experts are protesting to preserve it for its artistic value. The result? The construction has fallen into a state of suspended stalemate, neither being renovated nor demolished. It stands tall like a grim ghost, lying still just a few hundred meters away from the new terminal, a starkly ironic contrast. From the concrete ghost of the old Soviet bloc, we return to England to conclude the journey with the longest legal battle in modern aviation history, surrounding an airport with a buyout value of just £1. Manston Airport in Kent once had a glorious history, serving as a strategic base for the Royal Air Force during World War II with its super-wide runway to rescue damaged bombers. But when the military withdrew, all efforts to commercialise the place hit a dead end. The geographical location, too far from the core transport corridors, and fierce competition from the super airports in London have turned Manston into a bottomless money pit. The losses piled up to the extent that in 2013, the airport was put up for a fire sale at a shocking nominal price, exactly £1, the price of a newspaper. Unable to turn the situation around, in May 2014, this place officially announced its complete closure, leaving over 100 employees unemployed. For a decade, the runway over 2,700 meters long was abandoned, allowing weeds to grow through the concrete. The real farce began when the RSP Group jumped in with a plan to spend £300 million to revive Manston as a freight transport hub. Immediately, the project faced a 10-year legal battle from local environmental groups. They argue that reopening the airport will stifle the UK's carbon emission commitments under the Paris Agreement and torture residents with noise. The Development Consent Order, DCO, issued by the Transport Minister was repeatedly overturned and reinstated by the courts, creating a suffocating cycle of litigation. Not until May 2024 did the British Court of Appeal officially dismiss the final complaint from the public, paving the way for the project to reopen in 2028. But what about the current reality? Manston remains a desolate, silent land, devoid of any engine noise, waiting for the £300 million to truly flow into the heart of Kent. The journey through 10 ghost airports in Europe and its surroundings has revealed a stark truth. The empty runways, dusty terminals, and ruins buried in rubble are not merely the failures of the aviation industry. They are the most authentic reflections of humanity's macroeconomic gaps. In a world tightening environmental and climate change standards, is reviving or building massive aviation infrastructures still a wise move, or are we inadvertently creating new financial ghosts for future generations to bear? If you find this in-depth and direct analysis useful, please support the channel by like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next exclusive investigative reports that uncover the hidden aspects of global infrastructure. Please note, the content in this article is compiled from research documents, economic reports, and publicly available historical records with the aim of providing information, education, and fostering constructive critical thinking. The channel completely criticizes macro-level violations, policy gaps, and outdated planning systems. It absolutely does not aim to attack, insult, or defame any specific individual, organization, or country in an extreme manner.